Life is going to throw you unexpected hits. So you have two choices. You can pivot or you can panic. My guest today, Ben Hinton, is going to tell us more about that.
Welcome to The Leader's Edge with Jen, where vision meets action. This podcast brings you bold strategies and real insights to sharpen your leadership. Let's get to it and jump right into today's episode.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Exactly. So, as we know, you just wrote a book, or as I know, you've just written your book. Tell me the genesis of how you came to write this book. And the name of the book is Let Faith Grow.
Yeah, and I love that you just used the word Genesis, because it's a book about faith, but I do believe lives are transformed when we share our faith, not push agendas, but rather plant seeds. And when you mention the word Genesis, that's big for me because part of pivot over panic, or pivot, don't panic, part of that transition is if you want to know your ending, go back to your beginning. So when you say the word Genesis, I always think of and go back to my beginning to help me with where I'm at now and where I'm heading. So the genesis of this book, in 2013, I sustained a traumatic brain injury as a young adult. And it was a time in my life that was massive panic. And over time, the journey in the wilderness of sustaining a traumatic brain injury as a young adult, the journey in the wilderness turned into my transformation, where now, as an author and a speaker, that I get to say, and I get to, not I have to, I am a child of God, and I get to be a husband, a friend, an author, a speaker, a traumatic brain injury survivor, all these things I get to do. That's the genesis of it, that my worst day became my best day, and it is my duty to share that story for others and blaze trails, because your trials will blaze trails for others, and your mess is a message. So that's the genesis of why I wrote the book.
I love that. And, we just got finished with Easter. And when you were saying how God can take the worst thing and make it the best thing, it's like, man, isn't he the ultimate creative? Because he certainly did that with,
Yes.
the cross. So I think that's awesome that you're incorporating that in your philosophy. It's really inspiring. And is that like part of your mission? Would you say that's like you're on a mission to help people in this way?
Yeah, I'm on a mission because your adversity today is tomorrow's victory. My mission is to help people flip the script using the relationship that we have with our Father and the Word. That relationship, the Bible, the Word that is alive, more people need to dive into that to understand and have the relationship that in this life we can flip the script in this life. So this world wants us to react, and we need to react by being proactive. So my mission is to be a voice of the voiceless, like so many people who have a testimony, who have a journey, and have a story. And so by me sharing my story, it will encourage others to share their story in some way, somehow, and to inspire and encourage and to leave a legacy for others. Because at the end of the day, a legacy is not something that lives forever, right? The goal isn't to live forever, but it's to create something that will. So that's the mission side of it for me, is to create something that will live forever. Because now, I'm 38 years old, married, and we have two beautiful daughters, a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. So that's my legacy, is to instill in others so that they'll be inspired, encouraged, and then they can be the best version of themselves as they get older.
Nice. I mean, it sounds like I talk a lot about leadership qualities, and that's exactly what it sounds like. What are do you have people that have encouraged you aside from the Bible that because you obviously are a leader. Have you always been that way, or would you attribute a lot of that to your injury?
I think both. One thing I've learned, especially through personal development, and personal development for me, both when reading the Word, but also personal development books, really took off for me after my brain injury. Growing up, I always had leadership qualities. A lot of people would say that, they would say you should be a teacher. And I was always energetic. I was always the life of the party and just, had friends from all circles. So I felt like I had some leadership there, but I didn't understand what leadership really was. By definition, John Maxwell says leadership is influence. And so after my brain injury as a young adult is when I really understood how leadership works fundamentally. Leadership fundamentally is leader of one, leader of many. If I can't lead one, I can't lead any. So growing up, like a lot of people, I had potential. And it's when the potential met the purpose that my leadership really took off. But when I talk about pivot, don't panic, pivotal moments really come up. So I do see leadership qualities and I see where there were seeds planted years ago from other people before my brain injury and after my brain injury, families, friends, teachers, and people that I meet now. And I'm more aware of it now from the people that I meet and walk into my life, whether they're here for 5 minutes or 5 years. It's definitely something I'm honed in a lot more because I see it differently and from a different lens than I did growing up. But I see that God was always there, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I do see that there were leadership's skills and opportunities there. And now I truly see them and value them more through my experiences.
What would you say to someone that, they're like, well, you know, Ben has this great story, and so that's why he's a leader. What would you say to someone who, maybe wants to follow in your footsteps or just wants to really almost do anything that they don't feel worthy?
Yeah. So first thing I tell people, and I say this all the time, I think about this a lot. I was born with meningitis and encephalitis at 6 weeks old. And so I had some illnesses and I had some medical setbacks growing up. And then I had a brain injury as a young adult. And one of the traps, the panic that we get into, is we get stuck in our problems, right? And in this world throws things at us that are shiny objects, or this world just throws tough things at us. And what ends up happening is we collect things. We like to be, we're hoarders. And if we collect things enough, we don't want to let them go, right? They become idols. And you don't think of idols as a negative thing, but we hold on to things that become idols, and fear becomes an idol. So I would say to people, and I say this a lot, is that your problems aren't unique. My problems are not unique. Your problems aren't unique, but your gifts are.
Mm.
And the gifts that you are given are meant to bless others. And so I would tell people that, hey, guess what? You have problems, and so do I, but they're not unique. Your gifts are. So part of my mission is to get people to understand that we actually, by talking about our problems, by being vulnerable, one, have more in common than not. And number two, my second book is going to be called Pivot Over Panic, My New Reference Point. The idea of my new reference point is to point people to Jesus. I want to point people to Jesus rather than pointing fingers at each other. And also with references, growing up with medical illnesses and setbacks and sort of a traumatic childhood, and then being a father now and going through a brain injury that to me is one of the biggest blessings of my life. I have a new reference point. When we panic and we live in fear, that's our reference point. So part of my mission is to lead people in their transformation of my new reference point. So for me and where I'm at in my alignment, in my leadership and helping others, and I want to love others more than their opinion of me. And if I can do that, then they're going to love themselves and then they can be leaders of one. So my new reference point is pointing to the cross. Like you said, we just got, out of Easter Sunday. But the more we point to the cross as a reference point, the more we can let fear go, which is the other half of the acronym LFG, which stands for Let Faith Grow, but it also stands for Let Fear Go.
Yeah, I love things that rhyme like that. Tell us a little bit more about your book. What does it cover?
So it covers 12 chapters, and it pretty much picks up from when I sustained my brain injury. and the raw journey and the wilderness of running from something. So the panic part is, and I really want to emphasize that I share with people, I ran a half marathon 8 weeks after my brain injury. And that obviously will stand out to a lot of people, but that's not what should stand out. In 2012, so over 6 months before my brain injury, which I sustained January 9th of 2013, well, in 2012, I wanted to become a triathlete. I was in my late 20s and I wanted a new challenge. It was during the Summer Olympics, and I thought, you know what? I'm not playing basketball like I used to do. That's not going to be my career. I am a coach, but I need something else. I need something to keep me fit, keep me active. So I was like, you know what? Let's be a triathlete. So I signed up for my first half marathon and my first race ever. I always grew up playing basketball. And that's where God planted an opportunity, because that was in 2012. So the most important part of my journey is that in 2013, after I sustained my brain injury and I was in the hospital for 18 days, the pivotal moment was I'd signed up for this half marathon, right? I'd made a commitment. So there's three options. There's two obvious ones. The two obvious options were sell your bib to get your money back or give your bib away. The third option is the pivotal one, and that is this: run the race set before you. And so that was my pivotal moment that I share in my speaking. I share daily, and I share in the book. And I share the highs and the lows. And I share that your leadership is born in your trenches. And so I share with people, and I want them to see my trenches. My first full marathon was in 2015, and it was in about 5 hours and 49 minutes. My marathon PR years later, 2021, I ran it in 3 hours and 7 minutes. But the time difference isn't what's the most impressive part. The most impressive part is the journey. It's 26.2 miles both times. So what's the difference? Where did I improve my running from that first marathon to 2021? And that's what I share in my book. The 12 principles that are rooted in faith and rooted in my journey to now that when I run on purpose, and I chase Jesus, not things. And so, like, one big emphasis from the book, chapter 12, it's called Change is Inevitable. But change is inevitable. Growth is optional. Choose growth. And that is a pivotal moment. And that is a way you can pivot over panic. We all know that change is inevitable. It's gonna happen to all of us. So change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Choose growth. And so the book shows that by choosing growth, what has happened in my life, mentally, physically, spiritually, and these are 12 principles that people can carry into their lives as well.
Give your brand a boost with Jen's free guide, 3 steps to boost your leadership marketing and brand awareness. Grab the link in the show notes and subscribe to the newsletter.
I love it. Yeah, I was just saying this weekend, God's way is better.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
we really try to manage things in our own strength, and his yoke is easy and his burden is light. He's like, oh, if you just do it my way. So yeah, how many times in the Bible does it say do not fear?
Yes. It says that a lot. It
Yeah,
says do not fear. And it
I've heard
also,
365 times.
yeah,
One,
365 times it says do not fear. And it also many times says be still and let him fight the battles.
that's
And the
right.
lesson out of that for me was before my brain injury as a young adult, in my late 20s, I was in a position, we were engaged, and I thought, right, if you want to tell God a joke, tell him your plans,
Yeah,
right? Because he's going to search your heart.
yeah.
And it's Jeremiah 29:11, right? For I know the plans I have for you.
There's the
So
Lord.
for me, the journey has been that I knew God, but I didn't know, I knew of God, but I didn't know God like I do now. And so knowing God before, the journey was I was always trying to take him where I wanted to go. Now he takes me where he needs me to go. And it's not a life that I thought of growing up, but it's a life that I'm blessed from.
Yeah, yeah, we really connected because, well, obviously we're both Christians, but I was very interested in your book, and you have some speaking engagements. You have one coming up, I believe, in May. But that's what you're working on these days, is really getting your message out there. And I know working on another book, right? And
Yeah. Yep. Working on my second book. Again, it'll probably be maybe next year in the early year, but I'd like to get it done sooner. It's Pivot, Don't Panic. And the message is it's amazing to me. One of my favorite verses talks about being the hope of the hopeless. And it's amazing to me by just being vulnerable, and again, loving people. It's amazing when you share your story, how many people say, "Oh, you're an author? I always wanted to write a book, or I wrote a book and I'm looking for a publisher. I started, didn't finish it, all of these things." And so it's amazing to me that when you're pursuing and when you're doing what God's called you to do, how many people then look to you and say that that's what they wanted to do and that's their truth and they just never done it. So from the book to the speaking engagements to a future book, that's one of the biggest goals. Is that's how you make impact, is that more people are called and know that they're called, there's tension there, and I just want them to share their story.
that's really your message. That's what you want people to come away with, whether they're reading your book or chatting with you or listening to one of your speeches. It's like really, you summarize it for me. If you were just to say, in summary, what is it that you want people to walk away from you thinking about or getting the
Yeah.
concept?
In summary, I think right now I'm in a season, the best way to put it would be this. I want people to live in their identity, not with their labels.
Amen.
So many, especially adults,
Well,
right?
but I think you're saying that people don't realize that their identity is in Christ, right?
They don't realize their identities in Christ, and then they are living in labels, right? In the labels that come from this world.
This much, I drive this car. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that, and also, we get stuck with someone when we live with labels. Our talk goes this way, and it looks like a checklist. And that checklist, the talk is, I have to go to work. I have to make dinner. I have to pick up the kids. I have to, I have to, I have to. And over time, those have tos is a label that we get stuck in a box rather than the I get to.
Mhm.
I'm a child of God, and because of, I get to be so many things. And when we know our identity, then it's going to change the conversations we have with ourselves. 80% of the time, the conversations in our head are negative, and the longest relationship we're ever going to have in our life is with ourselves. So we need to reframe, going back to being a leader of one, right? That's a title. And it's a title not to be taken lightly. And so the title is, when things happen to us, which is adversity, most people say one of two things. And their lives are trajectory of their lives are two different ways. The first one is, why did this happen to me? The second way is, why did this happen for me? So when I'm helping people and telling people and sharing people and being vulnerable, once they open up, right? It's Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, do not be conformed by the patterns of this world, but rather renewed by the transformation of your mind. And that's what I want to do, is help them renew their mind and lead them, right? I'm not changing someone. I don't want to lead someone as a leader. I want them to lead themselves and just help shepherd them along the way.
That's wonderful. I know we talked a little bit before we started the interview. You were saying that you that if people wanted to have a sample of this, of course they can already buy your book. But if for some reason they wanted a sample, that they can reach out to you and you'll. Is that? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So, yeah, I would love to, I'm working on getting some e-version of the book. It's a Kindle version as well, off of Amazon on my website, but also reaching out to me for some future cohorts. that I'll be offering online, but then sample of the audiobook. If reach out to me and just say, I would really love to listen to your audiobook. 'Cause some people prefer audiobooks. And the one interesting thing with the audiobooks is I've met so many people who have had a traumatic brain injury, and unless I had mentioned it or I talked about it, they wouldn't have said that to me. And it really opened my eyes of there is such a huge population of people that cannot read. So if someone wants my audiobook because they can't read for a specific condition or a reason, and it would encourage them, my philosophy is, right, lives are transformed. We share our faith, not push agendas. So if someone needs and wants to hear the book and they drive a lot or whatever the case is, I have a link that I can give them a free copy of the audiobook.
That's fantastic. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think is also important to mention just regarding your mission?
No, and it's been a great interview, and connecting with you has been fantastic. I just think the overall theme at the end of the day is with the podcast and this interview and connecting in LinkedIn is really just that it's I statements, right? And I am statements. Just know who you are and work on the language first, the talking with yourself. But I would say to really sum it up is that and this is me, but I think this would reflect to a lot of people, but I would rather walk through the doors the Lord's opened rather than trying to get my feet, through the door. And so there are so many times that in our lives, the Lord has opened doors for us and we see those doors open, but we let our self-worth get in the way, right? That's why we want to walk through and we want to get through the doors and the crevices and all the things about us to build us up. But peace is not an escape. Peace is an entryway, not an escape. So I would just say, to summarize it, that hey, walk through the doors the Lord's open. Know your worth, and know that that's where peace is. It's not going to be perfect, and that's the pivot over panic, right? Look, I pray all the time. I pray for peace, expect pain, because that's just the way the story goes.
Yeah.
That's how his story went. But we want to always pray. So when we pray for peace and we expect pain, we're not being naive, but we can continue the mission that we're called to and just walk the doors the Lord's open because we're worth it.
Absolutely. And I would just like to add that in addition to reading your book, but like the Lord speaks to us through the Bible. So it's like for people that are really struggling to know their worth, I would say that's a great place to start because there's just something I want to say magical, but that's not. It's very spiritual that happens when we spend that time with God. There's the word gets into us, and it helps you to. I've found that it helps me to change in ways when I'm not even trying to. It's just the Holy Spirit starts to work in you, and I mean, I'm sure you agree that yeah, if you're wondering how to maybe get over that hump, it's like get into the Word, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great way to kind of yeah, I mean, pull it all together because I'll say every time, I am a child of God, and that's where it starts. Because when we have labels and we have these different hats, right, that we're trying to what is it said trying to fit a
Square peg
something
and a
into it. Yes, yeah. So that idea is this. So I'm married. So I'm a husband. I am a
father.
father.
You're a
And what ends up happening is, especially in these roles that we have, right? So in leadership roles in the household, there's a bunch of leadership roles going on, right? There's a bunch of little different identities and different things. So and hats that we have to wear. We do have to wear these hats, but that's not our identity. So the thing that trips us up is this. So with my daughters, I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. And what I'm blessed about and why I say pivot, don't panic. The pivot is this. I'm 38 years old now. And the blessing from the brain injury, the worst day became my best day in that it reminded me daily in today that I am a child of God first. And the reason that's important is when I look at my two daughters and I get emotional on so many levels and levels of joy, it's that I'm a child of God and so are they. When I get stuck in I am a parent, they are the child, I'm in no man's land because nowhere in the Bible does it say I am an adult. I am a child of God and I get to be a father. an earthly father, and that's part of my calling. So that's part of the biggest pivot there is understand who you are. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I am a child of God. There's nothing wrong with surrendering that. When you truly do that, for anyone that's struggling reading the Bible now, maybe they haven't read it at all for whatever reason, have peace in knowing that you're a child of God. And with a child of God, just lean in with curiosity. I was diagnosed after my brain injury. The first assessment I took, I was on a third grade math and reading level. So you talk about listen to respond. That's my life. That's my panic. I couldn't hold a conversation with people. But when I read the Bible, and I read the Bible daily, and I take a step back and I know I'm a child, I'm using curiosity. And simply by reading the whole context of the Bible, and not just from chronologically from beginning to end, but understanding that, hey, I might start in a verse in the Old Testament, and it's going to take me into the New Testament and Jesus' ministry because it's all relatable. But by doing that, that's where my most growth has occurred. It's through the word that I've listened to understand, and that's helped my leadership. Because again, at the end of the day, leadership is influence. So my leadership could have gone a completely different way. But because I can listen to understand through the word and lean into it, that's great. And as children, like, we don't have to make it complicated. Just read, ask someone, read with somebody. But I promise you, if you open the Bible and read it, it will take you somewhere because the word's alive.
Yes, I love the idea that, he's the vine, I'm the branch. I just need to stay connected. Like, just stay connected. That's a full-time job. Just try to do
Yeah.
that. You'll probably be okay. So this has been delightful, Ben. Where can people find more information about you? How can they connect with you best?
Yeah, so if you can connect with me on lfgbenhittonspeaking.com, and if you Google LFG Ben Hinton Speaking, it'll bring up my website. And LinkedIn is the most, I don't say popular, but easiest way to get a hold of me is Ben Hinton. And I, love connecting. And because the thing is that a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet, so I'd love to meet people and chat. But those are the two primary ones. And if you just search Google, if you can't see Ben Hinton Speaking doesn't come up, just search LFG Ben Hinton and it'll come up.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you
Perfect.
so much, Ben. I just know that your family and friends are so blessed to have you, and aren't we so blessed to have the best friend ever? And yeah, like I said to you once before, we will be friends forever. That's my new
Yes.
thing. I just love that. It's like, high fives
Yeah,
all around in heaven on streets
that's
of
right.
gold. So definitely looking forward to that.
Yep.
All right, Ben. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
That's a wrap for the Leader's Edge with Jen. Subscribe, share, and visit the show notes for the links mentioned. Stay bold, stay sharp, and don't lose your edge.